Welcome in, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I'm your co-host, Billy, with Billy Muzio. Can't even say my own name today, Jody. Billy Muzio. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Jody Smith. And it is Super Bowl Sunday week. Jody, it's the biggest game of the year for all of us fans out there. Lots of exciting times, lots of injury updates this week as well, which a lot of news will be pending on for that game. I know you just got done with your prop article. I threw in some fun ones because I knew you were going to be hammering down the more fantasy props. But are you ready for the big game?
Yeah, in a certain sense, yes, but it's been an exhausting week for me because I don't know. We talked already. I was going to start this 75 hard diet after the Super Bowl.
That's right.
I've been thinking about doing it for months. And then I was like, well, I'll give myself a realistic goal. Well, Billy, the other day, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I can't wait anymore. So I actually started it. This is day 3. So I started it Tuesday, which means it's going to be a pretty tame Super Bowl for me in the sense of what I eat, and of course I can't drink any beer for 72 more days or so. But all of a sudden, just with my phone in my pocket, I've jumped up to over 11,000 steps a day in the last 3 days, which is a lot for me because normally I'm sitting there behind my keyboard all day. So there's days where I may with my phone on me, I may walk 2 grand or less. But so it's been
What have you done to get the steps in? Are you just walk in or just
a lot of cardio. And this diet, you have to have 2 workouts a day. Like I'm doing as soon as I get up, I start on one. And some of that it can be things like, walking or moderate jogging or stretching if you need to, or weightlifting. Right now, I'm so sore, like everything from my belly up. It's so sore. I couldn't lift any weights today. So it became a cardio in the morning, and then the second workout has to be outside. So I've toggled between half attempting to jog and walk for 45 minutes, or like today I biked for probably about I don't know how many miles it was in 45 minutes. But yeah, so that's what I've been up to. So you're talking an extra hour and a half of every day now is spent exercising, whereas before I didn't used to, but I always had kept myself in pretty good shape, but I've kind of fallen off the wagon a bit in the last couple of years. So, it's just time to reel it in.
Yeah, especially with COVID, right? It just changed everybody's lifestyle. I mean, I think I gained 15 pounds through COVID, just drinking wine and sitting at home all day, or at the store. I just wasn't as active in the store as I used to be, and so I definitely feel you. I've just been eating better. That's all going to go out the window on Sunday because I don't care. I'm gonna just
That's
eat.
part of the diet. I have to stick with the diet. Now it's not real rigid. It's not inclusive. It doesn't say any particular diets. It just my choice. I'm just eating responsible. Like no empty carbs. Every bag of chips, everything of crackers in this house got thrown out, and that's the way I'm gonna diet it. It's you just get in these habits where your body starts craving empty carbs at particular times. At least if you're like me, where you have kind of the same routine during the week. Like I would come home from picking up Brandon every afternoon from school, and I'd want to start snacking. So now I'm not doing that. So you just kind of stay hungry all the time. It's like I'm, basically like I'm eating low carb, and you just kind of get used to it after. Well, 3 days in, so I'm still hungry all day. But from my past experiences with low carb, I'll get used to it probably by Sunday.
Yeah, I can't do low carb. I'm Italian, man. I like drinking wine and eating bread and pasta. It's low carb is tough for me. I mean, I've noticed I just drink too much, right? I'll have like a bottle of wine with dinner with the wife, and then I might have another beer afterwards. And so I've been cutting out alcohol, not all the way. I actually poured one today. I've been drinking once a week now. This week will be twice because of Super Bowl Sunday, of course. But I have reduced my alcohol intake.
That's technically next week. So
yes, I guess you're right. So I've been reducing the alcohol consumption, and I'm actually down 10 pounds in about 13 days, just from reducing my alcohol consumption. So I don't know.
That's going to be a key thing for me because for me, it went from when I first, became single again, and I started doing what I wanted to do here at my house, I started having these patio nights where after about, 3 IPAs, I'd be feeling pretty good. But fast forward, 3 years now, that intake has become exceptionally higher. It's because
Yeah.
I've gotten used to it. And where it was once a week out on the patio, now, maybe it's a couple times a week. So it's just what I need to reel in. So
Oh man. Well, I am unwilling to give it up for Super Bowl Sunday. So I'm
I
going to
think,
be
I
I'm
think
going to
the
be
best
eating
thing.
brisket, drinking beer. My buddy's bringing over, they call it Kansas City hash brown casserole. It's really intriguing. I've never heard of it or seen it. I Googled it. It looks amazing.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like my kind of dish, like potatoes and cream and all sorts of goodness, right? So I'm excited to give that one a shot. So shout out to Ty, my buddy who owns Good Life Brewing with my other friend Stewie. So they're going to be bringing over good beer, some good appetizers. I'm smoking brisket and ribs, and we're going to have a jolly good time. But let's hop into these prop bets. People don't need to hear us talking about our weight gains and losses and reducing our calorie intakes. The game line has flip-flopped multiple times throughout the last couple weeks. Kansas City right now is 1.5 point dogs. Philly, of course, the 1.5 point favorites. Over under the game, Joey, 51. We have money line right now, Chiefs plus 105. Eagles are at minus 125. What is your thought process for this game? Walk me through it.
Well, my initial thought was what my conclusion came to after I did, my research. And again, if this is the first time you're watching us, Billy and I have talked multiple times about the eye test, like what your eye tells you versus when you start digging deep into trends and all that kind of things. And a lot of times I failed to trust the eye test, and I have listened to the trends and all that. But my initial guess was that I thought the experience that the Chiefs have with this being their third Super Bowl together with Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, just
You sure you didn't quit drinking yet?
Yeah. Oh, trust me. There's nothing more I'd like to have right now, but and then there's a slight trend of I think it's 19-15 when an experienced quarterback faces off against the first time quarterback in the Super Bowl. And then it always seems like when you have these young upstart teams that they always seem to lose their first Super Bowl and need to win the second one. Not always, of course, but it seems like often we see them have to pay their dues a little longer. I think the line has been pretty close to correct the whole time. I mean, in a void, it feels like the Eagles with such an elite defense. That's the biggest advantage for Philadelphia in this game. Obviously, when you look at the offensive numbers, this is the top two offenses in the league. And I saw on ESPN this morning when you throw in postseason scoring, these teams have scored the exact same amount of points through all the games, the regular season and the postseason to get here, which is pretty crazy. It goes to show just how balanced they've been. And, the slight edge goes obviously to the Eagles ground game, where Kansas City's edge comes for the pass. So, what my initial thought is that it's going to depend on the pass rush. If the Eagles are able to generate pass rush with just 4 and are able to drop 7 into coverage, that could be a problem. And with a kind of hobbled Patrick Mahomes, my thought process was on the under. And after I did my research, Billy, and after I posted the article, which has your fine prop bets in it, that's kind of the conclusion I came to. That's my favorite pick, under 51.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you feel like it could easily become a shootout, right? You have two elite offenses. In my opinion, Philly has the more complete team.
Fair.
They have the defense as well as the offense. Although Kansas City's defense, has been stepping it up in these big games. I do like the under as well. I'm not confident taking it, though. It's one of those things where you select out of an abundance of research, but yet still has you kind of wincing, right? Because the possibility of this game to get away from.
You want to have a shootout on Super Bowl Sunday, don't you? That's what you want to see. But how many times have we seen And all those Patriots Super Bowls where in the first quarter, like the bet was always hit the under in the first quarter. And sure enough, it would hit like almost every time. Now, that was with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. It's a whole different situation than this game, but it still has been such a, profitable proposition recently that, something I'd still would probably be interested in. A lot of times it's checking out nerves, in particular for the Eagles, because most of this Eagle squad hasn't been there before. So it's going to be, there's always those nerves and that kind of thing at the beginning of these big games like this.
Scott's comment here is Hurts. He likes Hurts touchdown, Kelsey touchdown, Mahomes 25 plus completions, and Hurts over 34.5 rushing yards. Pays 425. I'm assuming he means as a parlay.
Parlay and all that together.
Yep. What do you think about that parlay?
Hurts rush touchdown, Kelsey touchdown, Mahomes 25 completions. That one's easy. Hurts over 34.5. That one feels pretty easy too. It doesn't look like bad. It doesn't look like a bad bet to me.
I was looking at Hurts' rushing statistics. Now, I'm glad this was actually brought up because I was looking at a line here. His rushing yards here. So he's been over this number quite a bit. Week 18, though, only 13 yards. Week 15, he had 61 yards. Week 14, 77 yards. Week 13, 12 yards. And then he had 157 in week 12. That was a good week. That's 86 in week 11. And then here's the streak that kind of scared me. 28, 23, 10, 27. 4 straight games under 27 yards. Coming back from that injury that he missed week 16 and 17, only rushing that one game in week 18 here. We saw the 13 rushing yards. And then, of course, he has his postseason as well. But the rushing number, you would expect him to hit this pretty easily here in the Super Bowl, especially if things aren't open. He's probably going to be a little bit more instinctful to just tuck the ball and run in a big game and try to, get the game on his back and extend plays. So I like the parlay as well. Does the rushing yards at all scare you looking at some of those logs?
Well, the Chiefs were the 8th. They were 8th against the run this year. So this is a pretty solid defense. Of course, that comes with the caveat. A lot of times Kansas City is off to such a big lead that teams have to abandon the run. So let's not take things, too much there. You have to read the context sometimes, but it doesn't feel like a bad. I mean, when I'm sitting there looking at all those in front of me, it feels like, I don't know. I keep getting wrong on the Hurts touchdown proposal. Like I projected that last week, and I felt really good about it because the Eagles were doing nothing but rushing in touchdowns. Not last week, but the NFC Championship. It's just that Hurts didn't get any of them, and you feel like perhaps the same thing could happen again. But it's worth throwing a unit on because it pays 4.25 to 1, so you got to like that payoff.
All right, so I want to go through some of these fun props first. That's what I always looked at. So the coin flip. There's a lot of math to a coin flip here. Have you looked into this at all?
Yeah, I've looked at it before. I have an ongoing $20 coin flip bet with my buddy dating back like 15 years, and he was killing me at first, but then I always call tails. He always lets me call it because he knows I'm going to call tails.
That's awesome.
But lately, tails has been real hot, or at least it was for a while. Maybe heads recovered a little bit here recently, but it felt like tails won several years in a row.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up where's the prop thing I sent? Here it is. Okay, so there's a little bit of research here on the coin toss. So I just want to kind of go over a little bit what I wrote in that. Typically, people think it's a 50-50 here, but looking at the trend, the previous 54 Super Bowls. So this is a large scale trend here. 54 Super Bowls. Tails has won 29 times, including 6 of the past 7 Super Bowls. So I like your tails call here.
Like I said, there was a bunch of heads before that, so he was cleaning up. But it's been pretty lucrative here recently.
It's been very lucrative.
My memory served right. You're right. 6 out of 7.
So $20 a pop. So you're up $100 out of that bet, I think, right?
Well, If you get back to how many heads came before that, I'm probably not lucrative. But I'm probably up from the poker that we used to play when we get together during the halftime show.
If you would, I don't think you're 54 yet, but if you would have been betting on it for all 54 of years, you would have been 29 to. You would have had 29 wins. So that's a pretty good odd there. National anthem. So we have Chris Stapleton One of my favorites, by the way. I love Chris Stapleton.
He's good.
He's going to be singing the national anthem here. The timer on the lowest line I found was on FanDuel was at 119.5 seconds. That's FanDuel Sportsbook. We're not affiliates, but hit us up if you'd like to be. From there, we have Juice is at plus 200 at the under. The over is at minus 250. Do you listen to Chris Stapleton?
I do.
So you know how he sings.
He loves to elongate a lot of his notes. So
Yes.
it was really interesting here in Houston. Sports radio, Lance Zerline and John Granado were talking this morning about this game. Except they talked that the over under there was 124. So if that's the case, you're getting 5 seconds of value for the line that you dug up. So you're gonna like it even more. But it feels like yes, and a chance for him to make such a huge national impact in front of a worldwide audience. Chris Stapleton, who himself, I believe he used to just be a songwriter. He wasn't even a singer before until someone, I guess, heard him and they said, "You need to be singing." But very talented. But like I said, he loves to emphasize his notes and his drawl and his voice, and it feels like a no-brainer bet to me.
We have a comment here back to the coin flip. Scott says he is a math major and it doesn't matter what happened in the past. It's still 50-50. There is a caveat here. Heads weighs slightly more than tails. And so I believe the math is 51% of the time if it is flipped with heads facing up versus tails because of the way the coin flips. You can Google fact check me on that. I'm not 100%.
Are we talking about the special Super Bowl coin?
Yeah, I don't know about the special.
Are we talking about a penny?
I think that's a quarter. So maybe you're right. It is a special Super Bowl coin. I don't know what the odd. That's a great question here. If anyone can look it up while we're doing the podcast, can you find out what the Super Bowl coin weighs and if there is a favorite or a heavier side that's going to sway the odds of this coin flip?
You ever wondered, like, okay, maybe this happens and we're just not wise to it, but why are there not spies that are watching these people? Let's just say Chris Stapleton. Why are there not spies sitting there watching his pregame performances and his practice runs? Because they're going to go through at least 2 or 3 dry runs to make sure everything's timed up well and all that. Wouldn't you think that someone would be paid to sit there with their time clock and hit that? It's the same thing for another silly prop bet they talked about here on the radio is something like what's the color of his cowboy hat? And it was like black was plus 350 and then everything else was minus 600. And I'm thinking, hold up now. Listen to me here. What if someone passed that on to Chris Stapleton and said, "Hey man, you wear a black hat, you're going to get half the one paid back." So he drops $1 million on himself. I mean, there's got to be some legal ramifications there, but it feels like, what's to stop someone from doing that?
Yeah. Oh, I know they took away the streaker bets, right? Remember, because of that, the kid that went out and did the streak.
It's making the same argument because this kid could be like, okay, well, I'm going to get thrown in jail or I'm going to get a ticket or I'm going to get arrested or whatnot. However,
that's what it was.
Down 10 grand on myself and it pays off 600 grand. Who cares?
That was the whole thing. So the kid, I think it was 2 years ago is when he did it. And then he went out and then boasted about on social media. And I think they took the money back. It was like this whole ordeal. I remember him going to jail and boasting about it. And then it was all over social media.
That's where you go wrong. Well, first off, jumping on the field is where you go wrong. But yeah, going and bragging about it, that's just plain stupid.
Oh, man. I totally agree. All right. Okay, with the silly ones out of the way, let's hop into some more statistical ones. So MVP, we all know that quarterback is usually the way that MVP unfolds. I mean, even in the year where Damian Williams had those 2 touchdowns, it still went to Patrick Mahomes, which I think he was robbed that year because of that effort that got them to the Super Bowl or won the Super Bowl for them. That being said, MVP award typically goes to a quarterback. Who do you have as your favorite to win MVP of this game?
Well, because I have the Chiefs winning the game by a handful of points, my MVP is going to be on Patrick Mahomes. But other than that, I know you picked you went the other direction, but it feels like there's only, what, 2, 3, maybe 4 players that could possibly win it. I mean, it would take something remarkable for a defensive player to win it. So it comes down to, like me, I look at it like it's either going to be Holmes, Hurts, Travis Kelce, or maybe one of Philadelphia's receivers has a remarkable game. And, well, the odds that happens is slim, because if one receiver has a remarkable game, then it's going to almost always come from the quarterback. So he's going to typically win the MVP. But, my I guess my dark horse pick would be, Devontae Smith. The odds on him have got to be pretty good, but, it's almost like a sucker bet.
Yeah, I picked. It's funny. You and I have been on polar opposites since we were on the same page through the divisional and the conference games, and then we got to the NFC and the AFC championship games, and we were polar opposite. You won each one of those games. I lost both of them, by the way. And here we are in the Super Bowl. I pick Eagles. You're picking Chiefs, it seems to be, because I would have picked Jalen Hurts as the MVP. Starting to convince me here, Jody. Maybe I should relook at my calculations here, because you destroyed me last week in our prop bets.
Well, it's been a nice postseason run for me, because every Thursday during the regular season I pick a game, and I started off I think 4-1 or 5-1, something like that. It was great. And then I just started getting slaughtered. And that's when I started bringing up to you on this podcast. I said, I think what I'm doing is I'm not trusting the eye test. I'm reading too much into looking at all these Vegas trends and facts and all that. And that seemed to skew my view. So once I started going back to a little more eye test, I started, recovering things. I think I went dead even during the regular season, but it's been a nice little run here in the postseason, 9-3, with the best bet so far. So
that's pretty good. I hope you put cash on them and you weren't just doing it for the articles. Did you throw money on them?
I live in Texas, man. I can't legally be playing these games. I'm just looking out for the readers, though.
That's it. You need to move, Jody. You need to move.
It's on the to-do list. It's just going to take a while. I got a kid that's fixing to enter high school. It's going to be a while.
Okay. Next up we have is first touchdown scorer. Who's your best bet here?
I'm going to agree with you on this one, and that Kelce plus 700 looked really awfully tempting. But going the other way around, I didn't really look at what the numbers are, but it feels like if you're going to go the other direction, if you just want to bet on the Eagles, Jalen Hurts is good. Plus, it would help you on that prop that Scott mentioned at the top of the show. And Miles Sanders has been on a nice little run, in particular in the NFC Championship when he punched in Didn't he punch in the first 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, he did. And you look at the line has actually shifted since last night. So last night, Jalen Hurts was actually plus 650. He was the favorite to score the first touchdown. Today, we have 3 who are tied at the number 1 favorite. So Jalen Hurts plus 700, Miles Sanders plus 700, and Travis Kelce also plus 700. The next up we have is Isaiah Pacheco at plus 800 and AJ Brown at plus 900. Those are the top 5-6 that are.
Where, just out of curiosity, where does Dallas Goedert rank in that?
Oh man, Goddard.
That feels like it would be a nice one.
Plus 1,200.
Plus 1,200. That's a nice return.
It's a nice little bit of juice. Yeah, I like it. I like Jalen Hurts and Kelce probably a little bit more because we always know what happens in the goal line. Jalen Hurts typically does that little bootleg and scores. Mm-hmm. So interesting to see that the odds went to plus 700 for him. So you got an extra 50 points on that.
Let's see how many touchdowns the Chiefs allowed to tight ends this year. Felt like they did okay. Gave up 9. So yeah, about half the time.
Yeah, and the Eagles are good versus the tight end. So I mean, I think they were top 5, top 6 without looking it up. Do you have that information in front of you?
Yeah, Eagles number 20 against tight end, so they were 12th. That's in fantasy points.
Fantasy points, yeah.
They only allowed 4 total touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 3 through the air. So, and looking at that, maybe we should back off Travis Kelce.
Possibly, but then it's the big game. I saw somebody did a post today, and it was Travis Kelce had. I forget. I wish I remember who did the post.
Something like in 17 career playoff games, he has like 15 touchdowns. I don't know what he's averaging over 100 yards a game, something like that's just crazy numbers.
Yeah, it was just a it
I
was
think it's no sign of slowing down. I think, this summer when we were doing rankings and projections, it was kind of like, because Mark Andrews was actually, trending to be the number one tight end. So it was kind of like you had a tough choice there, of who to pick. And we all thought, well, Kelsey's getting up there in age, so maybe this is the year he starts to slide just a little bit. But nope, no signs yet.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I mean, he could be playing into at this rate. It looks like he could be playing into his 40s the way he's playing. I mean, we all know that he's taking a little bit more hittings from inside the middle of the field, and it's going to eventually wear him down. But it does not seem like it's going to be happening anytime soon. Like I was underweight on Kelsey this year because he was getting near that age cliff. I thought, and tight ends usually have a little bit longer shelf life because they develop a little bit longer. But it's one of those things to where he's playing with one of the best quarterbacks that I've seen throw the ball in my time watching football, and especially in this modern day NFL world. But it's that favorite target for them. They're trusted. They just in unison, and it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. Next up, we have final score. This one's fun because I can't even find any odds on this on DraftKings. So, and it's the only sportsbook that I can view in Oregon, but I wanted to see what the payout was. Did you see the early release of the NFL script, quote unquote, the final score? Have you seen that meme floating around?
Yeah, ever since Arian Foster, said that in a very condescending way, and people kind of took off with it because, well, that's where we are these days. You can say something, and then people just take it as fact, and then.
So they have been saying that score, what is it, 34-38 or whatever that score was. I can't remember what it was, but whatever that score was that was floating around on that image is the most bet on final score of the game at that sports book. Could you imagine if it hits? Like if how much money they're going to pay out based on that score? And then
for this game, it's 34-28.
34-38, I think, was what was floating around on that picture, with a 10-point lead in the first quarter to the Chiefs was what the scoreboard showed on that picture. So could you imagine though, if Super Bowl starts off, Kansas City jumps out to a 10-point lead in the first quarter, you already know it's going to start posting all over Twitter, right? People are going to go back to resharing that thing.
Oh, you're going to see record in-game live betting happen. If that were to happen.
I was thinking about this. I'm like, man, if this actually unfolds the way that photo looked, it would change sports betting forever, in my opinion. I imagine. I mean, now I mean, the conspiracy would be that it's fixed, right? And all this was scripted out. What do you think that would do to the NFL and to sports betting?
Well, this is a society in a time of conspiracy theories and everything else. We saw the ridiculous Damar Hamlin garbage coming out for weeks, and the thing is, for these people, when they come up with this kind of stuff, whether it's insensitive or just over the top stupid or just whatever, there's never any repercussions. It seems like, you can just go on. I don't want to mention anyone on Twitter in particular, but there were people in this community, well, kind of in this community, not necessarily respected or whatnot, but going on about this Damar Hamlin and, just the fact that people can do this kind of stuff just for attention. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old man now. I just don't get it. But I think that, if it were to hit or whatever, that's exactly what the traction would be. And plus, starting on Monday, it's going to be one of the slower times in the sports calendar for the whole year. So, we'll need something to get people woke.
I could totally picture you. What is that? Get off my lawn. Jody over here waving his fists.
Yeah, pretty much. When it comes to that kind of garbage, yeah, for sure.
All right, go ahead. You have a bunch of props that you ran through in the article as well. Why don't you give me some of your favorites?
Oh no, that was all you, buddy. I just went through straight game picks, and you went through all the props. Going on your final score thing, I mean, I got to stay true what I've said, which is a slight edge on the Chiefs, and I'm going under, so I've got to come up with a score that's under 51. So I don't know, 24-23 Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that my final score prediction was, it's over 51. 31-28 is what I said.
Yep.
So that takes us, I can't do math in my head right now, Jody. What is that? 31 plus 28. That's 59. Yep. So that's 8 points over the line, but
comfortably over.
That might be a little ambitious, but I like the number. I don't know. It just called to me, Jody.
It would be a quality game. I'm not. A lot of times I get so, and you know this because I know that you are, you're big on food and family and hosting things. It sounds like you're having, the guys are at least a handful of people over this week. So you've done that enough. You realize that you miss so much of the Super Bowl. Like over the years in the 90s, the late 90s and early 2000s, I look back on those games and I don't remember them because I was almost always hosting back then. So I'm so busy cooking. Like I'd never watched the halftime show because I'm trying to finally catch up on cooking and or get a poker game started. So, I end up missing all that. And that's not going to happen this year because, I'm staying home. My fiance is coming over. I'll have my son. And, of course, I have to be very tame with what I'm eating and or not drinking. So I should actually be able to calmly watch the game and actually pay attention to the commercials for once because typically I don't bother.
So here's the beauty about my guest. One, they know that I am a football addict. Two, I start cooking brisket at 10 p.m. the night before.
Of course.
I stay up all night, hard work by the grill, right? I'm drinking beer and hanging out with the coyotes outside.
You got to keep it glazed. You got to keep the fuel going, all that. I understand all that, exactly.
Well, it's
a labor of love, buddy.
The beauty about my smoker, so it's a Kamado Joe. It's like a green egg, essentially. It's a ceramic smoker, and the beauty about it is that if you load that thing up, you can actually. I've gone 18 hours on one smoke filling that thing up. So you don't actually have to keep adding charcoal, which is nice, or lump coal per se. I just let it ride through, but the only problem is you got to watch the temperatures, especially with how cold we get. The ceramic is nice because it keeps it pretty consistent with temperature. But you still never know with fluctuations with wind and heat if it's going to roar up, and you got to make sure that you're closing the air vents because I'm old school. I don't have the attachments with the fans that some people have and the phone to their app and they can check all the temps. I go out there and I measure it. 2 fingers is like 250 degrees. 1 finger on the air vent is like 225 degrees, right? I have this science down my fingers on the air vents, sliding them. And so I stay up. And I'm sitting outside. I might nod off, but I'll set an alarm. But I know I'm getting tired. I'll set an alarm for 30 minutes, and I will sleep outside. And if it gets too cold, I'll come inside and set it, and I'll sleep on the couch right there near the grill. And I go back and forth all night. I pull this thing off about 1 o'clock. Guess you just start showing up around then. I let it rest for a couple hours, and I usually already prepped out all of the sides. So I got bean dip in the crock pot. I got my friends usually bring sides as well. And then I got, the ribs in the smoker and those come off right as everyone's coming over. But the briskets usually sits for an hour and a half afterwards. And then it just gets cut. And then from there, it's fend for yourself. Billy's watching football, which is everyone knows that, hey, cook's done. I'm out of here. I'm on the couch. I'm watching football. If you need anything, help yourself. It's in the cupboards.
Well, I can say, I was a traditional old school charcoal guy. So all this technology that's come into me, it's been really great. I've really embraced it. So when I went to a wood pellet wood pellet smoker, I did get some of those. I've got a phone app, I've got a probe that speaks via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It's pretty nice, man. The last time I made a brisket, it turned out, fantastic. It was, I was just having to check it every couple hours because I had a pretty small, the thing that holds the wood pellets in my grill is a little small. So I had to make sure it wouldn't run out because it had a tendency the gravity fed thing wouldn't necessarily work properly. So I would make sure I was checking it every 2 hours, but I did the same thing as you. I pulled it hours before. I had cooked my brisket in butcher paper, and
that's the way to do it.
I pulled it hours before, wrapped it in a towel, put it in the cooler for hours, and 3-4 hours later, whatever it was, I pulled it out and took the towel off and unwrapped it, and it was still steaming and it was very moist and beautiful smoke ring. So it turned out great. And the fiance's dog loved all that gristle and all that fat that I refused to eat. That I cut off for her. It was the best day of her life.
You don't like the gristle?
I don't really know. Brisket's never been my favorite because
The fattiness on it.
I don't think most people are willing to put in the actual labor necessary for brisket. They think you just throw it in the grill for 12 hours, whatever, and you're good. No, it's a little bit more work when it comes to this seasoning and picking out the meat and how you prepare it and all that. I think it's a little more work needed, but I don't like there's two briskets that I really dislike, and that's obviously a dry brisket. Nobody likes that, but I don't really like the fatty part. I mean, I don't like that chewy part, and some people really go crazy for that part, but I want the more lean part. So
yeah, brisket. I mean, forget prop bets. Let's talk brisket all night. So brisket. I'll start tomorrow for my Super Bowl prep. I'll go down to the butcher. I'll get a good sized brisket. I get the whole piece. I'll go through and I'll trim it up tomorrow afternoon. Then I'll put it in the fridge. I'll come back to it on Saturday morning, or I might do it late on Friday night because I usually start cooking on Saturday night. Is I'll throw the salt and pepper rub or mustard first, salt and pepper it Texas style, right? And then I put it back in the fridge. Huh?
You use mustard. I used soy sauce, but
yeah,
I am in Texas. I didn't use the mustard style, but it works.
Yeah, so mustard the whole bad boy up. Lay it on there, play with your meat, right? Sprinkle on the salt and peppers. I use a dash of, Aaron Franklin. Mm-hmm. So it's the Aaron Franklin seasoning. It's just salt and pepper, 50-50 with a hint of paprika for color. And so you just go through, salt and pepper this bad boy up, back in the fridge until the next day or that night, right? And then you pull it out. It's all sweating, looks beautiful. It's ready to go. Throw it on there. Don't touch it until like multiple hours in until you get that nice bark on there. And then at that point, you hit that stall right, you wrap it, you go, and then it's going again. But you're right. I've had brisket before, and I'm like, oh, they didn't cook this right. Like they pulled it off way too early. It's chewy, or they didn't spend the love on it. You can always tell a good brisket versus a bad brisket. Speaking of good and bad, let's talk about touchdowns here, passing touchdowns for this game. We'll wrap it up with a couple more props, bring it back to football. Here's everyone here for Jalen Hurts over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Do you like over or under on that one?
I feel like over, but it's like, do you want to hedge that Scott's prop bet? Because then if you're reading the game like I am, then you're getting dangerously close to that over. But of course, if you're leaning the other way, you think it's going to be a shootout, and you like the Eagles, then that feels like a pretty good bet. But two passing touchdowns against this secondary feels very doable.
Patrick Mahomes 2.5 over under.
See, that's a little more difficult. You're talking about a really good Philly defense. What do I have them ranked in my article here? Let's see. They were number 3 overall, number 1 against the pass. So this is a pretty talented secondary. And like I hit it at the top of the show here, if they're able to generate a 4-man pass rush, and they're fully capable of doing that, they've shown it in multiple games this year, and they can drop 7 in the coverage, that could be a potential problem, in particular for a Patrick Mahomes that's still not 100%. I mean, he still hasn't impacted him here in the playoffs yet. He's been over 350 yards in both games, but it's concerned because he hasn't played a secondary or defense quite like this. So forced to pick that one. I'm gonna go with 2. So we'll go under.
Yeah, looking at the game logs here, Mahomes passing touchdowns, 2 against Cincinnati, 2 against Jacksonville, 1 against Las Vegas Raiders. He had 3 against Denver, which was a pretty stout defense, but that's back to week 17 now is the last time that he's thrown 3. And then prior to that, week 16, 2, week 15, 2, week 14 was 3. So we're talking about 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 to weeks 21. In 8 weeks, he's only thrown 3 touchdowns twice.
Well, there we go.
I'm going to take the under here as well. I'm not crazy about that line. Let's look at some rushing yards. Boston Scott over 7.5. What do you think?
I had to look at his game logs before I said anything. It's going to be too difficult for me pick that up because he's going to be so far down. 7.5 for Boston Scott. It almost feels like they're begging you to take the over because he could easily break that on one little run, but it just depends on the snap rate. I mean, forced to pick because it feels like they're kind of putting out a low number, hoping they'll get a bunch of action on over. I'll take under.
Okay. Yeah, looking at his snap share, let's look at snap share. So weeks 21 against San Francisco was the championship game. They had 28.6% snap share. The week before that against the Giants, 24.6% snap share. And then they had week 18, of course, against the Giants, 32.4% snap share. Total yardage is 21, 32, 54. But on the ground, significantly lower. So it's one of those ones that I'm just going to stay away from. Let's look at Isaiah Pacheco, 47.5 on the rushing yards. What do you think?
It feels like a good number, but the problem with me wanting to approach that line is the fact that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be active in this game, and that takes potential opportunities away from both Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. And McKinnon has kind of really cooled off here recently as it is, so maybe it doesn't necessarily impact him that much. And, it's not like Edwards-Helaire or Pacheco are really extremely involved in the passing game, but it feels like something I'd like to avoid. Again, this is I think the Eagles were 16th against the run, so that's if anything, that's their Achilles heel. So maybe the Chiefs, in an effort to slow things down or spend more time on that ground game, I mean, it would make sense, especially if when the other things about looking at secondary and a pass rush and a hobbled Patrick Mahomes, it would make sense for them to approach things that way. But excuse me. Like I said, it just feels like it's a scary prop bet because of the potential of Clyde Edwards-Helaire to come in there and mess things up. But I mean, it feels like a pretty reasonable total, especially like I said, in a that's where the Eagles have been able to that's where opponents have been able to make some progress against that D.
So Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not played since week 11. Week 11, of course, injured, only saw 8.1% of snap share. But week 10, only 6.3%, 15.2% in week 9, 32% in week 7. He was already trending in the wrong direction prior to the injury. This is great discussion. How much do we think he's going to be involved in this game? I mean, they've been able to rely pretty heavily on Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon has not looked himself the last couple of weeks, but that being said, big game, big time to step up. How are you projecting this backfield to look this game?
I mean, it feels like if you're looking at straight carries, that Pacheco should get somewhere more than half, up to 2/3 of them. Even like you said, I mean, definitely before he was injured, he was kind of trending that way anyway. But hey, you know what? Maybe after being fully healthy, he comes back with some pep in his step, and he's able to take on some of that early success he had in the early part of the season. But of course, that was more of a fantasy thing because he wasn't particularly productive. He was just very good at getting the ball into the end zone in September. So, like I said, I mean, it's something that I wouldn't want to throw a big bet on simply because of his presence. But the number itself feels, pretty doable.
In the postseason right now, Isaiah Pacheco has had a 44% rush share. He's had a 34.9% snap share. We've seen McKinnon with 21% snap share on the rush side, rush share of 30%. On just a flat out snap share, this is passing downs and rushing downs, as well as blockings and everything else you could imagine in between there. Jerick McKinnon, 51.8% versus Isaiah Pacheco, 46%. Do you think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire return eats more into Jerick McKinnon, or do you think it eats more into Isaiah Pacheco, or do you think it's going to eat into them both?
Maybe a little bit into both, but like we both kind of said, Jerick McKinnon's effectiveness has kind of waned here in the postseason. I'm actually kind of surprised to hear those snap count numbers, considering how little impact he's kind of had in the game. But I think game flow will be more important to dictate that. Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he can catch the ball a little bit, but it doesn't feel like they like throwing too many passes to their running backs other than McKinnon. So that could game flow, again, could really limit how many snaps he sees. We have to assume at this point that he's healthy. I mean, there's there was a chance he came back for the AFC Championship, but he ended up ultimately not. So, how healthy is he? That's another fair question too. But it feels like, I don't know. Would he even come in and get a third of the playing time? It feels like probably not. I mean, going on the numbers that you just ran down, I mean, he might only come in and see a handful of snaps, but the presence is still there to potentially, muddy the backfield a little bit.
Okay, let's look at some receiving props, and then we will call it a night and gear up for the big weekend. AJ Brown over under 71.5 receiving yards.
Oh, he got me last week. I thought that was a great bet last week in a situation where, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because he had said something before the NFC Championship, and turns out that he, let us down again. So that said, okay, now because I got burned, now I'm going to think, okay, well, I'm not going to bet that. So, of course, what would happen? The exact opposite. So let's go over. Let's just stick with the over. Eventually, he's going to hit it, right?
I like the over here as well. Let's move on. Dallas Goedert, 47.5, over under.
Like I looked at earlier, the Chiefs against tight ends. I don't remember off the top of my head. I felt like I kind of liked them as a sneaky pick for
they're exploitable.
First touchdown. So let's go over on that one too.
Yeah, we look at his game log here. He saw 58 receiving yards, 46, 45, 67. That's dating back to week 16. So gotta like the matchup. I'm going to take the over here as well. Devonta Smith, 62.5.
Okay, so for a guy that just put his rep on the line to say under in this game and is picking the Chiefs, I just picked over on AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert. So even though I said that Devontae Smith might be a nice long shot dark horse play for MVP, that was kind of like, this, if you're betting among friends and you got a $20 bill to throw on it. Let's go under on Devontae Smith just to stay true to the brand.
Well, I projected the over here, Jody, so I'm going to go over here on 62.5 as well for Devonta Smith.
Well, I mean, looking at your picks of picking Philly 31-28 makes sense.
Yes. Let's take a look at now. This one is a little bit more difficult to dissect. All the receivers now, looks like the news today for Kansas City receivers is everybody practiced in full today on the receiving corps except for Kadarius Toney, who was limited. So let's start with everyone who is full participants. Juju Smith-Schuster, over under 37.5.
37.5. It's such a really odd total for a guy who is kind of their number one receiver. And you're talking about a really, really potent offense, but it just feels like this is one of the best secondaries in football and the pass rush. And again, and it feels like a really low number that maybe they want a whole bunch of action on the over. So let's go under.
He has not hit that number since week 15 against Houston, where he had 88 receiving yards. And then the week prior to that, he had 74. And then he missed it in week 13 as well. He barely beat that, 38 yards in week 12, under in week 10. So we're talking about 3 weeks since week 10 has he been over.
Yeah. Well, I thought then.
I don't know. That's just a tough line, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's what they do this time of year. They really shore things up.
Yeah. I'm going to take, I guess I'm the over guy today. I'm just going to pick over on everything, Jody. Over 37.5 for me for Juju. This one I like. Justin Watson, 14.5.
So one catch, huh?
Yeah. I think his catch is set at 1.5. So it is.
Look at Justin Watson's overall numbers. He's played like a lot of snaps in that offense, but is so rarely makes an impact. It really surprises me. Like when I looked, all year at their snap shares and their snap counts, it's like, man, Justin Watson sure plays a lot.
Yeah, 53% of snaps in week 20 against Jacksonville, 51.8 against Las Vegas in week 18, 30.5 week 17 against Denver, 76.5% week 16 against Seattle, 60.5% week 15 against Houston. What I say the line was 14.5.
Yeah, I'm looking at his totals right now. So we go back to, I don't know, we can go back to week 13. He had a 15-yard catch.
Yep. So he's over there by half a yard.
3 consecutive games with no catches.
0. Yep.
And then a 27-yard catch, a 67-yard catch, and then a 12-yard catch. So it's a sneaky line. That's what you get with him. I mean, it can just be that one catch. It feels like when he does catch the ball, it's typically down the field. It's a Super Bowl. Lots of odd things happen. Let's go over. Yeah. Let's say he catches a 20-yard pass.
It's one of my parlay lines. I have him in there as an over on the parlay line for 14.5. So I'm hoping for the one Justin Watson catch for the 20+ yards to hit. It's definitely on there. And I have an underdog team that's in the finals, Jody. It is a Philly Kansas City stack. It does not have Mahomes or Juju, but it does have Kelsey. It has Goddard as well, so double tight ends. It's got all 3 of the running backs there, and then I have Justin Watson, and I have Jerick McKinnon on the Kansas City side. So I need a Philly game here, Jody. Last lines. Let's take a look at this one's kind of sneaky too. Miles Sanders 4.5 receiving yards.
Ooh. I don't throw very many targets to him at all.
No.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, so Sanders lines here. I'll pull them up for you. We saw 1 target against SF for this. The stat I have doesn't separate the rushing yards, so he's only had 1 target here against SF. Yeah, 0 targets against the Giants. 1 target on week 18.
0 week 17, 1 in week 16, 1 in week 15.
Yeah,
he's just obviously making 1 catch. Could easily hit that. But looking back at his receiving yardage totals, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, you have -13, 6, 0, 0, 0, and 3. So under feels like it'd be the right trend here.
All right, one fun one, and then we're done for the night, Jody. And this one's from Scott. Over under on Kadarius Toney plays 2.5 series.
Oh, over. I think he's going to be fine for this game. It sounds like he was. I know he was limited today, but I believe it was Reed who came out a day or 2 ago and said he looked really explosive and really good. So,
well, that's the whole joke. Even when he's healthy, is he really healthy?
Well, it's always a gamble, but they seem to have unlocked a few things since he got out of New York and went there. So, 2.5 series. Yeah, let's go over.
All right, that's it, folks. Good luck in your prop bets. Good luck in your Super Bowl polls. And if you have any other FFWC, if you're in the Maui Madness hunt still, or if you have any of the playoff challenges in the hunt, good luck in those as well. We'll see you all back here another time. Have a good night and Merry Super Bowl, Jody. Merry Super Bowl, right? It's a holiday. We can call it that.